Okay.
Oh, thank you for that.
Colwell? Here. McGillivray?
Here.
Powell? Charles?
Present.
Long?
Here.
Moss?
Present.
Markham?
Here.
Madam Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Let's please all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Next up on the agenda, we have approval of the previous minutes. I need a motion. Commissioner Moss, supported by Commissioner McGillivray. Any discussion? Please prompt the vote.
Moss and McGillivray. Motion carried, 7 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you. Next up, we have approval of today's agenda. Anybody have any motion by Commissioner McGillivray, supported by Commissioner Moss? Anybody have any comments, questions, changes to the agenda? If not, let's prompt the vote.
Seven yeas, 0 nays. Motion carried.
Thank you. We've approved the agenda. So next item up on the agenda is public comment. Is there anyone here that wishes to address the Finance Committee this morning? Seeing no one, I will call public comment closed, and we will move on to item number 7, communications. I need a motion to receive and file our communications. Commissioner Kowal, supported by Commissioner Moss. Anybody have any items on the communications they want to discuss or pull up? Commissioner Charles, thank you.
Yes, nothing to pull off. Just to highlight that item number or letter F is a very, very happy thing for anyone who's driven down Northwestern Highway by the old Copper Canyon. It's literally falling to pieces, and so I'm really grateful for the new Soul Garden, who has decided to take ownership of that property, per passing, of course, and that makes me very happy. So just wanted to highlight New Soul Garden for making that happen for the people in Southfield.
Great. Thank you.
Expand.
Anybody else? If not, then let's prompt the vote on receiving and filing the communications.
Madam Chair, you have 7 yeas, 0 nays.
All right, thank you very much. Next on the agenda, we have item 8A out of the Lago Committee, fiscal years 2022, 23, 24, and 25, collective bargaining agreement for employees represented by the Michigan American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, AFSCME, Council 25, Local 2437, representing the Circuit Court and Family Court employees. I need a motion. Commissioner Charles, supported by Commissioner Long. Do we have anybody from the administration who wants to tell us about this? Anybody have any questions about it or concerns? If not, then we were looking for April, but nobody seems to have any questions, so.
April's on.
Oh, is April on the call?
As well as Julie Fisher.
Oh, okay. Sorry. April, you want to jump in and tell us a little bit about this one? Or Julie Fisher, you want to help us out here? Okay. Does anybody on the committee have any questions about this?
I hate to vote on something where all I have is this written text. I like a little narrative, but if we don't have it, we don't have it.
You want to table it? Make a motion to table it?
I think these are very important. Yeah.
Do you want to make a motion to table it? Do
Well, table means indefinitely.
you want to make a motion to whatever it is to it? Postpone?
So wait until the end of the meeting, maybe? Or
Perhaps.
Yeah,
This is
let's,
one of the series, these are the
Right.
part of the series of
Of
contracts.
so-
that
Maybe
labor
if someone
contracts,
just asked
right.
If everyone agreed and everything, she would feel more comfortable if someone could just answer, it went through smoothly. Yeah, 'cause I know they're
let's-
just additional, all the other unions are coming on, it's standard, and I thought she said everything was moving smoothly, but if someone could get her on the phone just to say they, everyone was in agreement, Londa would probably feel more comfortable. Okay.
okay,
Feel more
here she is.
Yeah, but I can't hear them.
Thank you. Good morning.
It's like in the movies when people go, "Gup, gup, 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 gup."
So we are talking about the collective bargaining agreement for the employees represented by AFSCME. So that's our first item on the agenda. So you want to just fill us in a little bit, April, about this one?
She may not be able to hear you, Commissioner,
Oh,
Maybe we could chat
to
it.
tell her.
even though her mic is available. She's saying that she can't hear.
Chat it to her.
It says VOCVTCPC is on mute right now, maybe that's why.
Commissioner Moss?
Madam Chair, may I suggest that we pass this agenda item over until,
Next one's here too.
until Ms. Lynch can get her communication stuff or get herself over to the conference room or something?
Well, she's also got the next item
she's the next
on the
one.
agenda.
Ah, okay, great.
So it's-
Oh.
All right.
We could go to.
Can you hear us, April? Can you hear us?
Off and then turn back on. Can you do that? Turn off the computer audio and then turn it back on?
Maybe log off and,
I feel like we're gonna have a lot to talk about with 9B, so she'll have like 45 minutes to figure it out.
Perish the thought.
Just saying.
Did you say 9B or 9A?
9B.
9B is going to have
give us
some
$5 million.
discussion.
Give us what?
$5 million from ARPA for,
That's B, not A?
that's B.
Oh, okay.
That's what I said. It's the being taking money from.
All right, well, let's do this. She's going to log off and log back on.
Yeah, that's okay. That's what I thought you meant.
Staff, what do you
There you
think?
go, whatever happened. Now I can hear you. Can you guys hear me now?
Oh, there she is. Okay.
I'm sorry, now I can hear you.
Okay, good. All right. Ms. Lynch, welcome. Good morning. And thank you for joining our meeting. We are talking about item number 8A, which is the collective bargaining agreement for the AFSCME
Yep.
employees. So you want to talk to us about that a little bit?
Sure, sorry about that. Yes, thank you. So again, this is another contract. This is a full open contract with AFSCME. The folks in AFSCME are in circuit court in the family, typically in the family division, so probation officers, some youth assistant workers, and things of their youth case coordinators, just different people over in the family court. They are very similar to the other unions that we've brought forward so far. They have a slight difference in that they were not, at this time, they would prefer a 2% raise rather than the increase in the contribution to the 457. So that works better for their members. So there's a little slight difference there. There is a couple of positions that we shored up, did some review with the process and comp and changed a couple of positions over there, as well as they have agreed to the 5-year model for the healthcare that I presented to Lago, and you guys received a copy of that. So they're going to be looking at some internal changes to healthcare in 22, increase in a contribution in 23, and another change into their prescription in 2024. So again, other little ancillary things addressing 410s and comp time. Nothing too crazy.
Thank you. Commissioner Cavell, can you rejoin us in the meeting? Thanks. Okay, Commissioner Charles has a question.
Yeah, I pressed the button, but I don't see my name. Maybe, I don't know. Hi, April Lynch. Just wanted to ask a couple of questions. I'm not familiar with the Me Too. Well, I am a little familiar with Me Too, but in this case, it says the Me Too in quotation marks. Could you speak a little bit about that? And then are these the only ones represented under AFSCME, or are there other instances where AFSCME might be coming before us?
No, so this is for general salary. So if for instance, if we give non-union a higher increase than 2%, then they would get the same.
Okay.
Only in the salary area.
That's the Me Too part.
Yeah.
Okay. And then are these all the AFSCME representations that we have in the county, or is this just one grouping?
Nope, just all AFSCME.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, UAW that we go through next is a little different. They're only separate because they're joining at a different time. But when we go to do their full contract back in 2024, it would come as one group. Typically, that's how it works.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay. Anybody else have any comments or questions? Stick around, April, because you're in our next item, too.
I gotcha.
Okay, anybody else have any questions or comments? Are we ready to vote? On item 8A, the collective bargaining agreement for AFSCME. Are you raising your hand, Mr.?
No, I'm simply.
Commissioner? Okay.
My little voting.
All right, our wands, our magic wands.
Yes, Expelliarmus.
Uh-oh, he's read the books, wow.
I have, haven't I? I even took the sorting hat program, and to my astonishment, I wasn't Slytherin. Put me in Gryffindor. Everybody, I lost like bets on that.
Yeah, you don't strike me as a
Good to know
Slytherin
you have a
guy.
good heart, right.
You're not a Slytherin guy.
The green looks good on you, though.
Madam Chair, you have 7 yeas, 0 nays.
All right, motion carries. Thank you very much. Next up, we have item 8B,
I got the tie.
which is the supplemental 2022 to 2024 supplemental collective bargaining agreement for supervisory and non-supervisory employees that are represented by the UAW Local 889 of the probate court. I need a motion. Commissioner Charles, supported by Commissioner McGilvery. All right, you want to talk about this one a little bit?
Sure, Ken. This is another supplemental as it relates to the UAW. This is for the Department of Probate. Again, very similar to their everything else, just clarifying general practices that are already in place over there. And then there was a couple of classifications that needed to be reviewed during the process. So that is all that is there for them.
Okay. Anybody have any questions on this one? Comments?
Comment.
Commissioner Charles?
Can't get back to the button for requesting to speak. April, I was just looking at the letter of agreement dated 4th day of August. UAW Local 889. Is that Joseph Roselle I'm reading there as the chair? The unit, is it unit chair?
They call them chairs in the UAW, which would be somewhat like a president in another union. So
Yeah.
he is for the UAW for supervisors.
Gotcha. Okay. Not just related to probate court, just generally
For the
speaking.
whole UAW section. Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Anybody else? Questions, comments? If not, let's prompt the vote, please.
Madam Chair, you have 7 yeas, 0 nays.
All right, motion carries. Thank you very much for coming this morning, Ms. Lynch.
Sorry about that.
It's all right.
I'll figure it out.
All right, good. All right, next on our agenda then, we have number 9A, out of department recommendations, the IT Development Report, 4th quarter 2021. I need a motion. Commissioner Kowal, supported by Commissioner Charles. Good morning, Mr. Tim.
Good morning, Commissioners. So this is our quarterly report. Submitted in the communications was the executive summary of the progress against our master plan, and that details how we're doing against those projects that have been identified. And as you'll recall, every quarter we bring essentially an invoice, and it's the appropriation to move the funds from the department budgets that were put there during the budget process and moved them over into IT to pay for the development of the previous quarter. So the executive summary report and the attachments kind of outline the work that was done for those departments. And you'll see it's roughly a 50-50 split of departments that are within the general fund, and then also departments or projects that are proprietary or outside the general fund. And if there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Commissioner Charles.
Yes, hi, Mike Timms.
Hello.
I wanted to just clarify, and it may not be, you might be the right person to answer, because it says item review tracking in the summary, where on the 21st it says Board of Commissioners, then Executive Office, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm not really familiar with where it's been to BOC, then it goes through other processes and it ends up back at committee. Are you able to speak to that process?
I believe that's the civic clerk routing process. Right. These documents, this particular resolution is created by the information technology team based on the project work that we do. And then when we submit that, it routes through the civic clerk routing and approval process, and that's what that's referring to.
Okay, because I'm just a little confused as to, it says approved, 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 final approved, 1028.
Right, those are all just every resolution that we do goes through those review and approval process. Depending on the type of resolution, it has different departments that will review it.
Okay.
But all of the IT ones are reviewed by the fiscal team. They're reviewed by Corp Counsel. They're reviewed by HR and risk management before they even get into the board staff, and then eventually to the chair of the committee to actually put it on the agenda.
Yeah, so the board staff, this Board of Commissioners, and Board of Commissioners down there, when I get my civic clerk approval display up to me, it shows me all of the departments and who has approved them, and then our staff has a couple of steps that take place before I get it, and I'm final approval. And usually when I look at it, everything's all done, and occasionally I'll kick one back and ask a question about, but I like it because it does show me the whole pathway that something has to go through. That's helpful to me.
Yes, and I think it's helpful too. This is kind of a wish, but I would really, I like charts and like pie charts because, I'm team IT all the way. And I give them the shirt off my back if I could. But it's helpful to see the big picture in a graph as opposed to report one week, report the next week, basically year to date or just something so that I don't have a problem with the appropriations and making those adjustments, but it's just a little helpful to see the full picture and how all of these little things add into it, at least for my take. But that's all I have. Thank you.
And you're talking about the money. You're not talking about the steps necessarily.
No.
You'd like to see, we spent this much this quarter, we spent this much this quarter kind of thing.
Yeah.
So.
And I believe that is in there are actually some pie charts in the executive summary that was part of the communications package. And that references the work that we did in this quarter in that master plan. But I will also happily send, it's a public document, public website of the 2-year master plan, and that's updated. Yes, that's one of the charts that shows how much development work was done in this last quarter.
Yeah.
But the 2-year master plan gets updated every quarter, and you can look at each individual quarter, and we have those same pie charts for how much work is spent in support, how much is in maintenance, how much is in planned maintenance and upgrades, how much is in enhancements and new development. So all those major categories. And then it's also broken out by department.
Okay. Thank you. That's something I haven't seen before, where the supplemental's kind of in the communication space. So don't mind it. I just didn't know it was there. Thank you.
Thanks for the question. Always happy to talk about that.
All right. Anybody else have any comments or questions on this item? If not, let's go ahead and prompt the vote.
IT. I think it was the quarterly report is what it's called.
I'm not seeing it prompted, or
You already
did I vote?
Yep.
Okay.
moved. They're just making sure Commissioner.
Ugh.
If you just give a voice vote.
Gotcha.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, if it goes too long, you know. You know what they say,
Yeah, I'll help you out.
short-term memory when you get older.
What do they say about it? I forgot. I just heard that.
Yeah, I know. Bingo. Okay. Did you have elections out in your world last night?
Just a school.
And it passed, right?
I saw
I
that.
believe so, I mean, it was pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
It's good.
You know, I didn't even check, but, anybody know how Julia Ruffin did in Pioneer?
okay. I don't, Madam Chair, you have 8 yeas, 0 nays. I don't.
She was on.
Madam Chair, you have 8 yeas,
Marcia
0
said she was
nays.
going to help her out.
Excellent, thank you. Item carries. So,
Marcia said she was going to go help her out, too.
next up
That's how-
is item 9B, Financial and Human Capital Management Replacement Project Implementation, Extension, Support, and Enhancement. I need a motion. Commissioner Cavell, supported by Commissioner McGilvery. I believe we have Kyle Jen, Sean Carlson, Lynn Sonkus, and Mike Tim here to talk to us about this project. So good morning, everybody.
Morning, Madam Chair and Commissioners.
Yeah, right. Yeah, just very good.
9B.
9B.
Chemical bomb in here.
Yes.
Destroy everything.
Okay, is everybody ready? Okay. All right, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. I'm just going to give a brief background, and then obviously Kyle and Lynn can provide some deeper background for each of you. You should have received, to each of the Finance Committee members, should have received this in your package already. But just to give a little bit of context around this, I think you just heard from Mike, but our IT department I think we've got a lot of projects going on, but if we look at in regards to our what I would say our top 3 projects, radios, a $60 million project. Certainly the ERP system is in that, more than $20 million. And then we have our UCC project, which would probably be our 3rd one, which is Wi-Fi and the voice over IP that is going on. So very critical, important project for the county. We have an old system in PeopleSoft. We made this decision a few years ago. How many years ago? 4 years ago when this went out?
Since we started the RFP process.
Right. So we've been heading down that track on ERP systems. Certainly, if you look at government ERP systems, it's no easy task. There's a lot of data out there that shows that a lot of counties struggle with a new implementation on a financial system. You need not go any further than just south of us to understand how difficult sometimes ERP projects can be. But I think we're close to the finish line on this one, and we're asking for a little over $4.9 million is what we're asking for on this amendment to take us to the finish line. I'm going to turn it over to Kyle Jen just to give a little bit more background.
Sure, thank you, Sean. Again, you do have the background memo. I'll try to go through this, high level and fairly quickly, and then certainly we're happy to answer any questions. As you recall, this project was split into 2 phases. So phase 1 of the project, which is the HR and the payroll side, went live successfully last July. So employees, including everyone at this table, is entering their time and getting paid, and there are a number of other HR functions that are happening right now through Workday. Phase 2 is the financial side of it. So, all the things, that involve county funds, in terms of our base accounting system, and so on and so forth, was delayed until this current October, so last month. a year ago. I would just want to preface all of this, by expressing our appreciation for the group of employees. There's about 30 full-time employees across fiscal services, HR, the treasurer's office, purchasing, and IT. There's actually a larger group of people working on the project, but there's about 30 people that have been, working on this for substantial hours above and beyond their day jobs, starting with Lynn, but, lots of other people behind the scenes. So I wanted to mention that. So, there have been some key factors in terms of creating the delay, and top of the list is COVID, from two perspectives, really, in terms of the competing demands, in terms of all of the dollars that the county got out very quickly to local, households and businesses, and the competing demands that created. And then secondly, the fact that it's just harder to do a complex project when everybody's remote and trying to, do this on a Zoom call versus doing it in person. And, we're hoping that we'll be able to do more in person as we get closer to the end here, obviously depending on the COVID situation. So earlier this year, the team, as I got on board and the team was talking through and evaluating where the project was, it was clear that not enough progress was being made, and that we didn't have a clear enough view of status to get to an October go live this year. The key step we took quickly was to bring on a full-time project manager, which this project had not had someone working, on the county's behalf to manage the project holistically. That was one of the things Lynn was trying to do on top of everything else she does. We were able to quickly identify an individual named Matt Clater, who's actually on the call. If there are any questions for him, he brings substantial experience working on Workday implementations. He had just come off spending a number of months helping the city of Baltimore get their Workday project back on track. During this time, as we brought Matt on to assess where things were at a more detailed level and build a comprehensive and detailed plan to get us across the finish line, we did slow the pace of work to reduce our costs, with our contractor, and try to reduce the level of employee burnout. So, Matt's assessment identified a number of weaknesses which are outlined in the memo, in which we have already taken steps to address a portion of, and then are asking for some additional funding to address the other weaknesses. So at this point, we do have a detailed plan. I provided with the memo a summary of what the timeline looks like, but there's a whole system of information underlying that has detailed tasks, who's responsible for them, so that we could be monitoring on a weekly basis what the status of the project is, and if there's any slippage, make sure we're addressing it as quickly as possible to get us to that May 9th go live. So the request in front of you, as Sean mentioned, includes a total of $4.9 million. I would highlight, that it's really three different buckets that make up that $4.9 million. So if you think about, sort of pure delay costs and the fact that, we are paying IT staff, we are paying our contractor, for the fact that there's a longer period of time here, that comes out to about $1.6 million out of the 4.9. That's a net figure. We have about $2.7 million in remaining costs, but because we did slow work, we have about $1.1 million that's remaining from the existing project budget. So that gets you to the net $1.6 million. We're also asking for $1.3 million to add resources to both ensure project success and try to reduce the demands on county staff and put them in position to be as successful as possible. With a major system overhaul like this, people's day-to-day jobs are really impacted and changed, and in the long run that should provide efficiencies and improved work product, but in the short run, people need as much support and training as possible to know how to use the system. And then finally, there's $2 million in components, that frankly were always going to be needed, but just hadn't been contemplated in the original budget. So there's the need for support, after the system goes live. There's a period where you're still troubleshooting problems, identifying solutions, and stabilizing the system. And then there are a couple of key components that weren't included in the original budget in terms of we have to be able to build the budget book and we have to be able to produce the annual financial report. So that's the third component to get to the total of $4.9 million. We are proposing to use ARP funds here. This would kind of go in the county operations budget. We had, if you'll recall, originally proposed $15 million in ARP funds for county operations for the upcoming fiscal year. That was reduced to $5 million in the adopted budget, I think, so that we could have these kinds of conversations. So this is kind of the second $5 million in our view out of that 15. And these costs are eligible. There's a category for providing government services that's tied to the federal guidance on how you calculate what your revenue loss was, and you can use dollars for things like that, for this. So that's kind of the high level, and we're certainly happy to answer questions and have the whole group here to do so.
Okay, with that, I will start with Commissioner Powell. If you can put in your request to speak. Okay.
Did mine show up on there? I put mine.
Yep, I have Angela, followed by Charlie, followed by Gary.
Oh, mine did.
So I don't have Chris yet, and Eileen. So Eileen will be after Gary, and Chris will be after Eileen. So Angela goes first.
Oh, I didn't see that.
You guys didn't know you'd be on the hot seat, did you?
I just had a question in regards to the PeopleSoft financial system. So that's like if you can, is that the system, like the naming of it? And then the human capital management system. I just want to know what human capital management, like what is that? Or what type of, is that just the name of the new system or it's more definition wise. I'm just trying to understand these words.
We're moving from PeopleSoft to Workday. So the name of the system is Workday, not PeopleSoft. So PeopleSoft is the current system that we have.
Okay.
So we're moving to Workday.
And the term human capital management is just a description of these kinds of systems in general.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you.
Managing the people of the county, their
Right.
pay,
Making sure we're
their
paying them.
benefits,
Yeah,
their,
keeping track.
Okay.
where they are in the organization, all of that.
Thank you. I just wanted clarity. It's a long word.
Good question.
A lot of jargon. Yep.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Is that it, Commissioner Powell?
Yes, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, next up we have Charlie, Commissioner Cavell.
Thank you, Chair. I have a few questions, but I think Gary's gonna jump on a few of them related to, this started as a $13.8 million project, understandably before your tenures, then got an additional $5.2 million in December, and then now, coming back for another 4.9. So I'm sure Gary's got something to say about that. So not to delve into that, but Kyle, you mentioned ARP being used for this. My biggest hang up about this is, one, what Gary's probably going to talk about. But the second thing is, not to boost you up too much, Gary, but I know Gary and Mike got it going in, right? But just this seems kind of like doublespeak in term. Not that this isn't a worthy cause, not that this isn't something that has to happen, but from what I've been told by our leadership and what I've heard has been told on the executive side of things is we're not going to do these one-off piecemeal projects to try and make sure that we figure things out in like an ad hoc as needed way, because we have 3 years to figure out how to spend this money. We're going to do it in a diligent, planned out way. Part of that's on the commission because we haven't given you like a spending plan that's cohesive and coherent, but I believe the commission has plans in the works to figure it out by the end of the year. So I think instead of doing this 4.9 kind of suck off from the 244 million we started with, but the 190-ish we have left, because that's how quickly these sorts of one-offs add up, I suggest we table this till January when we have our commission plan together, where we give the appropriate buckets for the appropriate amount of money. I know you had mentioned, Kyle, best practices, 15% for government operations. That means there'd be plenty enough for this. We're happy to also work on, if not tabling this perhaps until January, perhaps figuring out what we can do to make sure people still get paid. But that's not the full 4.9 million, because as you said, there's 2 million additional. So that's just up for conversation, and happy to talk more if that's okay later, once everyone else speaks.
Yeah, I'll just weigh in just in regards to when we look at, I'm just going to speak best practices on the portion of the ARP funds, and I'll stay at that level, and Kyle, you can jump in. But first of all, I think it's Oakland County, the Board of Commissioners here are to be commended. When I've been on conference calls with other NACO members and folks around the country of a county of this size, we spent 27% of our CARES money on county operations. Most counties of this size spent 40, if not close to 70% of their dollars on county operations. So we spent 27%. Most of it went out to households, businesses, nonprofits, to really preserve Oakland County's quality of life and ecosystem. And so that's to be commended by this Board of Commissioners for appropriating those dollars and the speed in which that took place by the County Executive Office. Number two, as we look at these ARP dollars, we've said, hey, we don't need 27%. There's been conversation and dialogue around those county operations being down around 15%. And so we're looking at a portion of this for this project. This is clearly eligible when we look at the Treasury guidance, and we think that this is a very appropriate spend. So that's what I'll weigh in on that piece. And Kyle, I don't know if there's anything you want to add.
Right, I mean, I think the administration has been looking at the ARP dollars and talking to you in sort of three buckets of addressing acute needs, which, substantial dollars have been appropriated for already by this board, addressing long-term chronic needs, which I think is the piece, where we want to be as thoughtful as possible and wait till January before we start moving forward on those so that we have the best possible plans in place. And then the third, kind of smaller bucket is the operational piece. And I think we view that as part of that bucket. And as you mentioned, we're looking at 15%, which would be 36 million as being an appropriate amount of dollars on the operational side. To date, $15 million.
Can you pull the mic closer to you, please?
To date, we've appropriated $15 million, so this 5 would bring us to 20 out of that 36.
So, if I may.
You still have the floor.
Okay. So, not to say that this isn't COVID or ARPA worthy, totally understand and agree. What I'm coming from it of is because we're talking about acute and chronic, and then like you said, Kyle, having the third bucket for government operations, I'm of the mind, let's maintain what we're doing, let's make sure no one goes hungry, let's make sure things don't stop. But until we all figure out what we're willing to spend from being the holders of the purse and having the prerogative to figure that out, give us 60 days to figure that out so that then through the holiday season, right, if we're just having real talk, there's Thanksgiving, there's all the holidays, there's New Year's, so there isn't going to be $2 million worth of additional things implemented in the next 60 days. Let us figure our stuff out so that then we can make sure that we're having a more coherent conversation as the group. That's my thought for the commission or the committee to consider.
Okay.
All right, I'm done.
Commissioner,
Thank you.
if I could, I'm not going to address the prioritization of ARP dollars or any of that, but I will, just to give all of you some context on why there's some sense of urgency. Mm-hmm. First of all, the PeopleSoft system is end of life. It is in a I won't say high-risk situation, but it is an end-of-life piece of software that has not been maintained over more than a decade, and that was a decision in order to save money on the maintenance so that we could do a new project implementation. So that's just a little bit of the back history on PeopleSoft as a platform. It still works. We're still processing all of our financial transactions through it. We absolutely, as Kyle mentioned earlier, expect efficiencies in our financial operations, our purchasing operations, our project tracking of all the financial projects and all projects. All of that will gain efficiency through this implementation. And yes, you could argue that could wait a couple months. When we do big projects like this, delay always costs money. And we will continue to pay maintenance on 2 systems. We will continue to pay contract resources to, in some cases, sit and do nothing if we just delay. Or we let them go, and then we have to go through the process of rehiring, reskilling, bringing them up to speed, because that's a constraint that we have on the contract labor side in IT, is if we don't have work for them, we will let them go to save the money, but then we will have a delay in restarting to bring them back up to speed, to bring new resources in, if we can find them in a constrained resource environment. So there are several business risks in terms of cost, in terms of technology aging out, as well as the cost of the delay in our execution. So there is a sense of urgency on the implementation side, on the technology side, on the people side, for why we think we should do this now rather than wait. So again, those aren't policy things, they're just practical technology system implementation items.
And that's why I'm saying maybe we think about 2.9 million right now and then keep the other 2 for additional advancements in new technology and progress and work until January, when between Thanksgiving, which is soon, and January 2nd, I mean, I don't know how much of a taskmaster you are, but I don't think people are going to come up November 30th to learn a new system. I may be wrong, but
no, we have the
2.9.
team. We have the team working today, and we just want to let them continue. So
that's what the 2.9 million is for. And also, yep, that's the 2.9 bid.
Let's move on. Commissioner McGilvery.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. First of all, Charlie, thanks for calling me out.
Sorry, Gary. My bad.
We started back in 2018, and the anticipated cost at that point was $13.8 million. Then we added an additional $5.2 million that was budgeted last December, and now we're adding another $4.9 million. Is that my understanding? So altogether, this is a $25 million project to install Workday for the county. Is that correct? When do you plan that implementation will be completely finished on Workday?
well, the implementation schedule is that we will go live with the financial modules, the purchasing modules, May 9th?
Yep.
But some of these dollars are to help us with that ongoing support, both in the departments with our consulting arm, our implementer, as well as the IT resources for several months after that, as well as Kyle mentioned, there were 2 additional increases in things that we knew we had to do that weren't part of the original project around the CAFR statement as well as the budget process. Those are additional pieces of functionality, and those will go on for several months after the May 9th date. But May 9th is when we will go live, for example, processing expense reports or processing purchase orders. Those will go live May 9th.
Okay. When we approved the $13.8 million back in 2018 or 17, I don't remember exactly when it was, I kind of thought that that was going to be the cost of this whole system. Mm-hmm. And now we're up to $25 million, and we don't know exactly if that's going to be the final tally when we're all done. So I have some real concerns about tacking on $1 million at a time here, or several million at a time. So the full implementation date is when, Tim? Mr.
Well, May 9th is the date that we will go live with those financial systems.
Okay. And is there any systems to follow that?
All the time. I mean, the IT master plan, I mean, and I don't mean to be flippant, but in some respects, to Commissioner Charles' earlier question, the IT master plan is executing projects in the financial arena thousands of hours a year, and that's in our current budget. So we will always be doing upgrades to Workday, as well as we have over 50 systems that integrate and tie to Workday. Those systems will always need continual updates. So we will be doing updates on, that's part of our support and maintenance and planned maintenance that we do every year.
I understand that.
I would just emphasize, this budget request, however, we sat down across a number of meetings to ensure, that we've got everything built in that we need, to get this project across the finish line, to get it stabilized, and to add the components that we need, for effective and efficient county operations, so that we're not in the position of having to come back a year from now and ask for additional dollars.
Yeah. And I think Commissioner McGilvery, and that's what you're driving at. How do we know, right? I mean, I think in essence, how do we know you're not going to come back for another $5 million request? He asked for $5 million, and that was the direction at the county executive office is, hey, let's understand the mistakes that were made on this originally, and Kyle talked about it earlier. Project manager wasn't assigned to this. That was very, very important. We made that adjustment. That's part of this cost that's in there. And then also, what are the things that were not included in this originally, and folks said originally, hey, let's just leave the price tag there. We'll come back for these. No, let's handle this all up front right now and come with the true price tag so that we can be done with this project. And so I think what Mike has been referring to, too, is even though the go-live is May 9th, there are costs that we've put in here as well that will speak to other things that need to take place after. Whenever you have an IT system come online, there are going to be some glitches along the way, and we need to account for those and then not come back.
Are those funds already budgeted?
That's part of this as well.
Okay. That's all, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner McGilvery. So Commissioner Powell and Commissioner McGilvery, if you would push the little button that says undo that I'm requesting a speak. There we go. Thank you. All right, next up we have Commissioner Kowal, followed by Commissioner Long.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you for your efforts and your presentation here today. I think what I've heard said that we already took so much of the art money and appropriated it, and this would be part of that money that we did set aside. So that's something we've done already.
It's not quite that
Not quite.
straightforward. I mean, it's part of, what we had planned to be about $15 million in county operational expenses funded from ARP
this year.
Okay.
in the current fiscal year. But this would be a new appropriation
Out of that.
within that planned amount.
Out of that. So we've
Yep.
already kind of had that discussion, and this would be the second withdrawal of that money. Okay.
Correct.
Just have some questions about when you mentioned resource turnover, volume and complexity of numerous integrations. I understand the resource demands, and by speaking of complexity of numerous integrations, is that systems integrations, or is that partially due to the fact that there was numerous departmental reorgs going on during that very time? Because that was, I think pretty much supposed to be revenue neutral, so I don't know if that played into it in any way, shape, or form. Maybe it's more IT related, but if the fact that there was a lot of reorganizing of different departments, if that contributed in any way, that's something I think that we need to know and be aware of. And obviously COVID-19 impacted it hugely. But at the end of the day, I'd just like to say that, we've all looked to the state of Michigan and how they do IT. So I'm really happy that we are taking a much more comprehensive look at things and addressing things I think sometimes when the state sees problems, they just kind of paper over them and they just keep on going. And I think it's a good thing that we want to make sure that we get everything exactly right, so that we have a good working system to take us quite far into the future at the end of the day. And I think probably, I'm sure there's an ROI on this. At the end of it, when we implement this, wouldn't there be kind of cost savings as far as, time and processes and so on and so forth? You mentioned using this to produce the CAFR, to do all these other things. So, what would the return on investment be in that regard? So I guess that's three things I've covered, but just if you could address the complexity of numerous integrations and perhaps what the ROI might be on this system.
Sure, why don't I take the first crack at that? So the integrations piece is, an ERP system, again, involves every dollar, that flows through the county in one way or another. And, certainly we have other IT systems that are involved in processing the county's finances. So, for example, the treasurer's IT system that's used to collect property taxes, that system has to be able to talk to this system, and that involves a lot of work in terms of making sure that those systems can talk to each other in a seamless way, and that there aren't glitches that are causing then problems with those financial transactions, either for the users on the other end or for the county. So that's just one example, out of about 50 of those integrations across the county. In terms of return on investment, as Mike mentioned, the first impetus for this project is just that the current system was outdated, hadn't been updated. There's concerns about security whenever you have an outdated system. So part of it was just, it was time and we needed a new system. We certainly do see efficiencies, and, we are driving the team to identify, as the system is being configured for operations, let's not just do things the way we've always done them. Let's find those efficiencies, and, Lynn can probably talk to a couple examples of that. But, on the budget side, this system will not just produce the budget book, it's also going to give us planning tools to be able to forecast within a system, as opposed to doing sort of manual calculations in a spreadsheet. So, that's the first example that pops into my mind as a budget person at heart. I don't know if you have anything to add to that, Lynn.
Well, I was just going to say another example is like the county's point-of-sale system that's used within various departments, animal control clerk's office, treasurer's office, the utility billing system. So prior to those integrations being in or being built with PeopleSoft, people used to have to do all of that work manually, enter those journal entries, record those cash receipts, and now it's an integration existing in PeopleSoft. We didn't have all those integrations and bells and whistles and reports on day one when we implemented and went live with PeopleSoft and back in 2006, but they're existing now, and we have to, the complexity and volume I'll say quite a bit more involved than was originally anticipated. There's multiple different variations on how the integrations take place. As far as so it's mainly the integrations that are being spoken to as far as complexity, reviewing all that. The other piece of that, when you're talking about the reorganizations, there was no cost dollars in related to the departments reorganizing. It was the already existing labor that went into going in and making those configuration changes, not only into PeopleSoft, but also into Workday, updating the integration that we have between Workday and PeopleSoft right now for the payroll transactions. So that's where some of that additional work came into play, and then the stabilization of the phase one implementation, dealing with some of those updates and configuration changes.
And then I would also say what we've seen too, and I think Mike Tim can speak to this a little bit more directly, but with the VSIP program being offered with the voluntary separation incentive, it has also allowed certain departments to leverage as people are departing to look at their organization and say, we don't need to backfill that person, obviously, because there's some efficiencies going on with some of the projects coming online. And I think, Mike, you've got some examples of that just in the IT department alone.
Yeah, and several departments really, so we've already implemented, over a year ago, the payroll implementation on the HR side of the Workday project. And we used to, in many, many departments, do our time tracking for payroll on a piece of paper that then someone did data entry into the PeopleSoft system so that it could go to the payroll department to actually cut checks. And that paper is now gone, and some of those positions are now gone countywide. That work is now done by an employee just saying, yes, I worked my 8 hours on these days, or in the case of the non-exempt employees, I worked 8.2, or I worked a holiday, or I worked a second shift. So those things there are rules built in to calculate overtime, shift premiums, et cetera. That's all done automatically inside of Workday, just based on simple data entry that the employee now does. And the supervisor just does a very simple review and approval of those timesheets online. So there's been some significant efficiencies in the operation just related to payroll. And that's just one example of what we've implemented so far today.
Thank you, and just really good explanations. Somewhere along the line, somebody mentioned security as well, and that's come up in public comment here a few times about, our public records, whether people are dealing with a clerk or the treasurer or whatever department they're dealing with, and that their records be secure against, with this system, I take it would, not that we're not secure now, but I think that this system would ensure that even more, so that when people are doing transactions with the county, that information would stay where it's supposed to.
That's absolutely correct. I mean, that is one of the benefits of implementing the new technologies is improvements in both access, the identity of the user, and both of those are key attributes of maintaining security. Identity and access management. Who's allowed to get to it, and how do I know that you are who you say you are? So all of you, if you go to Workday, if you do it from a different network than the county network, you are prompted for multi-factor authentication to get out to Workday. That's an improvement in security that we don't have today with PeopleSoft. We have other security controls with PeopleSoft, like you can't get to it unless you're on our network. So yes, there are absolutely improvements and flexibility with the new system.
And I will just add to that, Mike, during the RFP selection, one of the highest rated score was the security aspect that IT, when they reviewed all the applications that we were looking at.
Great point.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Cowell. Next up, we have Commissioner Long.
Okay, I just have a couple brief questions. So the project started in 2018, but because of COVID delayed it, I'm looking at your memo. That's why it qualifies for the American Rescue Plan. So we know it qualifies for sure because of COVID hit.
Right, that's part of it, yeah.
Okay, because of the delays during that, I just saw this on the, I found that. That was my question a while ago, but then I'm finding some of this stuff. So that, for sure, that 4.9 qualifies. We will be not rejected or anything.
Absolutely.
Okay. And then my second question, and I saw a couple eyebrows raised, is why is it taken to May to, how much more, it sounds like we have a lot more work that it's taken to May, and that's probably for you, Mike, to implement live.
It's really a very cross-functional project. It's a combination of the IT integrations. It's a combination of we have to move all of the data from PeopleSoft into Workday. And then somebody in fiscal, somebody in treasurer, somebody in HR has to check and make sure that the data is actually moved correctly. And that's just a small part of it. Then there's the changes in all the business processes, like how we actually process payroll, how we process vacation requests, how we process expense reports, how we process purchase orders and pay invoices. All of those business processes are going to change for everybody that executes them. And in fact, there will be new people involved in executing, and there will be people that used to execute that have a different role than they do today. So there's a lot of training that has to occur in the departments, in addition to the amount of work that the implementation team has to do to make sure that the transactions actually flow the way we need them to handle our payroll, to handle our expenses, to handle invoices, to handle retirement planning, et cetera. All of those business processes, hundreds of business processes are changing. And that's where the bulk of the work is, and then the training for all the
And
users.
that sparked another question. So what other larger counties or counties are going to Workday? I forget, you probably told us this, but is there anyone else going?
Denver did, right? City of Baltimore did. And
But in
there
Michigan,
was-
is anyone, or are they still on PeopleSoft? Or do you know?
A lot of the smaller local municipalities use BSNA, so larger entities, I don't know what, I think there was Grand Traverse County was, although
They were
they're
looking.
not large, they're implementing Workday as well. There was.
So some are still at the older
Yeah, so-
PeopleSoft, or is PeopleSoft not older, but we just wanted to get into a better system? I mean, PeopleSoft could be updated, but we chose not to and go into.
It's end of life, so they are
Okay.
actually not developing that software any longer. So in
Okay.
2010, 2011 timeframe, the decision was made to freeze that system. We have not made any, obviously we had to fix anything with our support provider, but there's not been any new functionality added since 2010, 11 timeframe. And then the cost to update it to bring it up to date was going to be it would be like an implementation in and of itself, and you're not really gaining any new functionality, so to speak. So that's why a new system was being pursued.
And I'm sure I heard this, but we've been taking long, so I forgot. So, thank you.
I hear you, Commissioner Long.
I'm like, I didn't remember, like, why? I remember now.
All right, next up, we have Commissioner Cavell for a second time, followed by Commissioner Charles.
Thanks, yeah. I appreciate your questions, Commissioner Long, because so if PeopleSoft is end of life, that means it's just maintaining, right? It doesn't mean we say push this to June 1st if, God forbid, everything falls apart and we have to push this to June 1st. It's not that people aren't going to be paid or people can't process their taxes between May 10th and May 30th, right?
Well, and again, all of the payroll functions are already in Workday. We're
Right, 'cause
talking
that was phase
now
one.
about
Yeah.
the fiscal side, expense reports,
Right.
purchase orders, invoices,
Right.
the budget process. I'm sure I'm missing
Grants.
Yeah,
grants.
I would add, there's a timing issue here. Normally, when you implement a new financial system, you do it at the start of a new fiscal year, which had been the plan. We evaluated, whether to delay a full year to implement next October 1st, but we're concerned about the costs, that come with that. So doing it approximately halfway through the year is the next best option and the option, that we're going with. And by doing it in May, it's after we've closed the books on last fiscal year, but it's before, we're into the meat of the budget process for the upcoming fiscal year. So that's why May was selected as the date, for that context.
Understood. So, well, to that question then, the CAFR, that usually comes out when?
End of March.
End of March. Okay, so you're going to do it on the current system anyways. Okay. You mentioned tax collection. Is the treasurer having problems with tax collection? And foreclosures, right, March 31st is kind of when it has to be for the year, right? Taxes are December and summer, so, I mean, May 9th, I understand the timing there, but like the...
Obviously, all our current systems are currently operating. The longer you wait to replace the system, A, there's risks that things break and stop working, and B, there's the cost factor. So that's why we view May as the most strategic time to go live, to avoid both of those.
Let me also say to that point, I think this is an important point to emphasize. We're not saying that there's risk to create fear to garner votes here today. This is a real risk. This happened recently on our voice over IP this past summer, correct, in regards to our implementation. Not pointing blame at Mike, but we make decisions sometimes when we decide, hey, we're moving from one system to another system and we're not going to maintain anymore in order to save cost. That puts us on a bridge that's not getting, the maintenance it needs, and it potentially has that opportunity to fail. Whether it fails or not, we're not here to say that, but there is an enhanced risk with that. So I want to underscore, and that's not just, us just saying that to say it. There's a recent example of it happening. Now, our IT team did a great job of shoring things up, moving things to the cloud, and showed in their value and their worth in that process, but there are risks to waiting and delaying.
So just speaking to that, that's because in 2010-11, maintenance was not upkept, and then the following 11 years, that's not because we took an extra 60 days during the holiday season to get our act together. That's just to reiterate that if something breaks November 25th, that's not because we didn't vote yes today on this. That's because in 2010, PeopleSoft was determined to be the end-of-life thing that we're not going to update. If the outdated cash register system in the treasurer's office isn't fixed in the next 60 days, that's not on you all, that's not on us, that's on things that happened before all of us. Just to say that I understand your argument, but that does not resonate to me. So I would like to move to make an amendment to have this be a $2.9 million resolution instead of a $4.9 million resolution.
Is that a motion?
Yes.
Do we have a second?
So where are you amending the resolution? So instead of it being 4.95 million, make it 2.945 million.
So I'm not seeing a second. Therefore, your motion fails.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so is that it, Commissioner?
Yeah.
Okay. Next up, we have Commissioner Charles.
Thank you. My comments are actually more so directed to the Finance Committee. Back to my little pie chart needs, but call me a novice, which I totally am. I forgot about the executive side of this where I thought it was our $200 million, quite frankly. And every time I hear that, there's some pulling away from it, I'm like, wait a minute, we're still in work group mode. So for me, I mean, I'm in support of this that's on the table right now, but overall, our work groups, we were told in caucus that some decisions wouldn't even be made till January. And I'm concerned that the executive's office will continue to come to these meetings with appropriate needs that they've vetted through all the proper processes. And then it'll leave us in January with $50 million to get affordable housing or to shore up our CVTs or whatever the case may be. So it's my hope that the next meeting for the Finance Committee, we could have a visual aid of where we are, what's coming down the pike, and almost to what Mr. Cavell was saying, almost a moratorium on anything right now until we've decided what it is we want to do with the ARPA money. Like I keep, even in my other committee, we've already moved to spend money. So as a Finance Committee, I think it needs to be our modus operandi to see the full picture, the whole forest, and then identify the trees that need attention. Otherwise, we'll look up and we've got all these great ideas of what we want to do as a commission, and there won't be any money left for us to utilize. It'll all have been utilized across the street. So that's all I want to say about that, just to make sure it's in the record.
That's why I made that motion, by the way.
Thank you,
I get
Commissioner
that.
Charles. Is that it? That's
Yeah,
your,
that's it.
okay. Next up, we have Commissioner Powell for a second.
Yes, I just want to kind of support Charles as far as, let me be clear, I am a yes vote for this today. But I think because we have had several conversations in different rooms, in different groups about ARPA money, what we're planning to take, what are the plans, what we're looking at. I just think at least by the closeout of the year, if we could get an update overall of the projected movement, what we have done, what we're working on, what we're looking at from the executive office, I think that would be great for us to have an update, at least before the end of the year. But I am a yes vote for today. Thank you.
We'll take back that
Thank you, Commissioner Powell. So I think what I'm hearing is that we would like to hear the whole picture from the executive branch, where they think they're going. But there's also the piece of it that is us. Because we have, as you said, work groups and so on, where we're trying to figure out what we want to do. We are a team, you know. We're the legislative branch, and you guys are the executive branch, and we do need to be working together. So I want to have clarification for myself on something Commissioner Kowal, I think, got clarified for us, which is we had already agreed to set aside $15 million for administrative ARP activities, and you are considering this $4.9 million a piece of that $15 million.
Correct.
Okay, yeah, you're nodding your heads, let's get it on the record
Yep.
verbally, yes. Okay.
But that hasn't been allocated yet. They
Well,
only
this
got
would be
5 million.
appropriating, if we voted to pass this, it would be recommending appropriation of this amount of money for these tasks as part of that $15 million that is planned.
Correct.
I stated that correctly?
Yep.
Yes.
I got a
Okay.
question.
I will call on you in a minute. I have the floor, Mr. Cavell.
Sorry.
Okay. My experience in business as well as government is when you have a train that's moving down the track as far as this one has, and you decide you're going to stop for whatever reason, and it may be a really good reason, it costs money, as someone else said earlier. It costs money, and it also creates the potential for unforeseen issues that you create by doing that. So I'm always really reluctant at this point in a project to say, let's stop, you know. So I'm really not of a mind to say no at this point, but I think you're hearing loud and clear from the Finance Committee as well as the Commission, because we represent all 21 people, and I've heard this from folks who aren't on Finance. You know, let's be very intentional and thorough in how we're reporting what we're doing with the ARP money already, and then what we're planning to do with the ARP money in advance, because I think we're all sitting on groups where, gee, I'd like to spend $4 million here, and they'd like to spend $22 million over there, and you guys already want $5 million more. So you can see where it's, I mean, I have a hard time keeping track of it, and I'm reading all this as fast as you send it to us, right? So I will be in support of this proposal, but I think you've heard that we need to be more intentional about the reporting that we're doing and the coordination between the two, executive and legislative branches, on the ARP money. I'll just say, I get a lot of emails that say, come to this Zoom meeting, NACO's going to talk about how you allocate your ARP money, or come to this meeting, we can consult with you on this and that. And I'm assuming that you guys are taking a lot of those Zoom calls and meetings, and because that's what your job is. I take the ones that I can, that I have the time for, but I don't feel like I'm even really in the position to make those decisions, right? I'm just the chair of the Finance Committee, guiding this in this way. But I'm hopeful that, you are out there in the broader mix, bringing this together as an executive branch philosophically and priority-wise. What are you hearing? What do you want us to be concentrating on? And you may find as we work through this on other issues down the road that we're not all in agreement, that would be where we would want to spend the money. So that's a philosophical, throw it out there. It doesn't really have anything to do with this proposal in my mind, but yes, let's be aware that we need all of that. And then Commissioner Cavell, I'm going to call on you for the third and last time.
Understood. Thank you, Chair. Just to say, this is a great thing that we're doing, and we should do this. But to piggyback off what Chair Markham was saying, so just to make sure I understand, this $15 million has not been appropriated. This is you asking for new money from us. So this isn't in the budget. Right? Am I wrong there?
Correct.
Okay.
So there was a plan, there is a planned $15 million for county operations in the current fiscal year. $5 million was appropriated in the original budget. We have requests we've brought for approving specific spending items for operational needs driven by COVID that are pending before the pandemic committee out of that $5 million. And this would be the second $5 million to get the $10 million total appropriated.
Understood. And then, so follow-up question. If this, and I may not understand this, so I'm glad that we have the finance folks here. If this is ARPA eligible, can this not be a general fund expense that we then reimburse later? Because my biggest hang-up about this is not that this is not a good project, not that Workday isn't a good system, but the fact that if this is something we think is a worthy spend, then we should spend it first. And then second, if y'all keep coming back, chipping away at our ARPA money, then we're not going to have, like Commissioner Charles said, enough to go around. So can't you make this a general fund allocation, and then we'll do the ARPA later, or again?
Right. So I'd say a couple things. One is, to make sure we're being as thoughtful as possible in terms of how we track ARP funds. They are contained in a separate fund than the general fund. The CARES Act, we ran through the county general fund. The ARP dollars, we are not. So, we're trying to make it as clear as possible. And we view, because of the impact of COVID on this project, it's appropriate to use ARP and not have to utilize general fund. I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought on the second piece of the question.
Replacement.
What was the second part of your question?
Well, so just to that, we've already used $13.8 million from the general fund and then $5.2 million from the general fund to do this. So you're saying it's just nice and easier for the spreadsheets to make sure that ARPA dollars over here and general fund dollars over here. We've already spent whatever 13.8 plus 5.2 is in general fund. And then second, we've also set the standard or shown that we can do that double over with the $10 million from ARPA that was then reimbursed.
Correct.
So
we're trying to,
we can
as we've had the conversation, I think previously with this committee, our goal is to move out of a world where we're kind of making adjustments on the back end. We want to be thoughtful about what's the best fund source to use for a particular purpose upfront, appropriate the dollars, have a clear funding source, and have a clear maximum spending authority.
So, right, so you're saying to make it easier, you're going to use ARPA when you could use general fund dollars. And then what that means is we have $5 million less as a commission to help figure out what people in the county need to spend it on. Sorry, that last part was really weighted. We can use general fund dollars, correct? This can be a general fund expense.
Certainly, you can spend county general fund on any purpose that's appropriate as a public purpose.
So is this a motion if we just switch the line items from being ARPA to general fund? Because again, I'm worried that we're just going to keep picking away at the ARPA money. And this is, by the budget director, a worthy expense for the general fund that can be reimbursed using ARPA later, if need be.
Yeah, I think I just want to step in here. I think Kyle won't say this, so I'm going to say it on his behalf. We set aside 15 million, so comments of saying picking away, I think are inappropriate. I know that may be how it's perceived, but 15 million was talked about.
No, it was not earmarked because five was in the budget.
Excuse me.
And 15 million was for planned use. This is a portion of that 15 million that was discussed. So there's an insinuation and a suggestion that the executive office is going to keep coming back here. That's not the case. I just want to make sure that we're going on record to say that.
Just to rebut that, you say that now, but you're coming back for more because this is a 13 million, then a 5 million, then 5 million more. So
Commissioner Cavell, they've said that
it's not written down. It's not in a budget. It's on a spreadsheet in their office saying this is our plan. Plans change. We have the authority of the power of the purse. So
I think they
if things
answered
do
your question.
change,
I think they answered your question, and you can vote the way you want, right? Commissioner Moss, you had a question?
No, the discussion with the Board of Committee is either the Board of Commissioners has a policy and a procedure for allocation of the art money, of the art money, or we don't. And if we don't, we're just ad hocing it to whoever comes along. Either we do or we don't. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else have any comments or questions at this time? If not, then I think we're ready to prompt the vote on, let me make sure I get the title right. The Financial and Human Capital Management Replacement Project, Implementation, Extension, Support, and Enhancement.
Madam Chair, you have 6 yeas, 2 nays.
Okay. Motion carries. 2 nays. Okay.
Thank you, Commissioners.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you for your support.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, we have public comment. Do we have anybody in the room who wants to speak before the board? Seeing no one, I will close public comment. Is there any other business to come before finance today? Seeing none, I will call the meeting adjourned at 12:24. Thank you, everybody.
Good discussion.